Alright, David Harry here, and in this video I'm going to show you the absolute fastest speeds that I have ever got from an external SSD on any of my Macs. However, and unfortunately, I'm also going to have to show you that the exact same external drive also suffers from thermal throttling, which then affects the actual speeds after so long. So it's kind of a double-edged sword, this video, but it's a problem that I found whilst I was doing my preliminary testing, and it is unfortunately a problem that I'm going to have to show people because it would be irresponsible of me if I didn't show this issue. Anyway, what I'm going to do is dive into a very detailed video here, which is probably going to be quite long. It is going to consist of a bunch of close-ups shortly of this enclosure and this SSD and how I put them together, and then it's going to go to, let's see, how to format the SSD on a Mac, and for that I am going to be using an M4 Max MacBook Pro, and this is indeed the actual computer that I will do for the testing. Then as far as the testing is concerned, I will do some synthetic speed testing, and then I will do some real world speed testing, and there will be chapters to various things in this video as well. However, before you start going through the chapters, you may want to listen to the introduction first, because there is a bit of information that I need to explain. Okay, so the enclosure that I am using is this one here by Zike, and this is the Z666. Now this is a USB 4 enclosure. Technically it is not Thunderbolt 4, however Thunderbolt 4 and USB 4 basically have the same similar protocols for data transfer, so they are usually not usually, they are interchangeable. However, and technically speaking, it's a USB 4 enclosure, not a Thunderbolt enclosure, but all of these Macs are totally 100% compatible with an enclosure like this. So any of the Macs which are Thunderbolt 4 will see this as like a 40 gigabits, like, you know, enclosure. However, if you're on an older Mac which doesn't use, say, Thunderbolt, for instance, on its port, it might have USB-C for just standard USB, or even USB-A. It will still work with the correct cable with an enclosure like this, although you're likely to only ever see it at something like 5 gigabits per second or 10 gigabits per second. With any of these like Apple Silicon machines, they will not see it as a 20 gigabits per second device. It's just an anomaly that I'm not even going to go into it. Apple have done something crazy with their interface, and then you can't do 2 times 2. Anyway, I'll just leave it at that for that bit. And then the SSD that I'm going to be using is really, there's some things about Apple that I just can't bend my head around. Right, and then the SSD that I'm using is the Samsung 990 Pro, and this is a 4 terabyte. Now, the thing is, there's a couple of things that are a bit weird with this particular enclosure from the get-go as well. So when it comes, it's kind of got this plastic shroud around it. Now, the weird thing about that is that plastic is an insulator. So to take something that is going to heat up and then cover it in plastic, Zike have got their reasons for doing that. I don't know what they are, but I've taken it off because it was already problematic without the plastic on it. But if that plastic shroud was left on it, the temperatures would have gone way higher than what they had done internally inside the actual enclosure. Now, maybe Zike have put the plastic on because maybe people are picking it up going, oh, that's warm. So Zike might have put the plastic on so that when people pick the drive up, they don't feel that it's hot. But the problem is, if that is the reason, I don't know if that is the reason, but if that is the reason, then yeah, the drive's just going to heat up even more with that stuff on. And then if people are picking it up and can't feel that it's hot, they don't think that there's a problem with it. So yeah, it's a bit of an odd decision. Oh yeah, there's also a little built-in tiny USB-C to USB-C cable which slots into the actual drive itself. Now this is super handy because if you've got, say, a laptop on a desktop like this and you just pop your drive in, really small, short kind of like, cable length, and very neat. However, this cable doesn't operate at 40 gigabits per second on these M4 Max. Now I'm going to surmise that it will not operate at 40 gigabits per second on any Mac either. So this was operating at 10 gigabits per second, and I definitely know that because the maximum speed that I was getting on this M4 Max here was just in the high 900s of megabytes per second when I done the actual speed testing with the short cable. Now, if it is a 40 gigabits per second cable, there's some kind of like compatibility thing going on with the Macs. However, this cable here, which is the longer cable, definitely a 40 gigabits per second cable, so no issues with this one. Anyways, just quickly, the issue that I've run into in this particular setup was because I tested 4 NVMe Gen 4 SSDs with this enclosure quickly to find out which one of like very quick tests was going to be the fastest, and then that was the one that I was going to pair up with the enclosure, which ends up being the 990 Pro 4TB here. Now, the other SSDs may not have gone into thermal throttling. I don't know, because I just chose the fastest one for the job, because the whole point with videos like this, it is to show people the fastest thing that they can use. I mean, you know, is anyone really buying you know, a USB4 or even a Thunderbolt 4 enclosure? Are they really buying it so that they can put the slowest SSD in? Because I don't think so. So basically all I've done here is chosen the fastest one that pairs up best with this enclosure, and it just so happens that it thermal throttles, and the enclosure does get really hot as well. So it is definitely a temperature or a thermal throttling issue. Now, I could have used one of the other SSDs that have got one of the other Gen 4 NVMe's, but I couldn't have, because I already knew that this issue existed, and there's no way I would have been doing like a responsible like job to anybody watching these videos if I would have shown something that worked knowing that there was a scenario that didn't work. So that's the reason why I'm showing this particular scenario, because, well, bottom line, I'm not going to bullshit people, and I'm most certainly not going to lie or bullshit on behalf of any manufacturer either. And to be clear, Zike didn't expect me to lie or bullshit, but I'm just saying, you know, I'm here for the viewer and also like the people who are going to buy these products. So that's the reason why I've got to show you this particular scenario here, which isn't the best scenario. However, there's definitely going to be SSDs that will work with this that won't thermally throttle. I just don't know what they are. Anyways, that's enough of this introduction. Let me get into the video proper. Okay, so the first thing that I will show you is this plastic shroud that is on the actual enclosure. So as we can see here, the enclosure is completely encased in plastic here. Now what I'm going to do is just quickly show you how I took mine off. Now I don't know if I'm going to be able to keep focus constantly here, because with the plastic being shiny, I think it might interfere with the autofocus on the camera as I'm doing this. However, what I'm going to do first of all is to take the compartment door off here. So let me just pop that off and then slide it off here. Now, as best as possible, you kind of just need to push the enclosure through the plastic here. Now, I think, let me just take the cable out first. So let me just try pushing it this way first. Hold on. Okay, it doesn't seem to want to go that way. Let me push it this way. Okay, so I'm pushing it that way. So as we look there, there's the actual side there where the cable goes into. So I'm pushing it out from that way there. So obviously that seems to work easy enough there. However, this bit here that sits on top of the cover, this doesn't really slide off. So what you've got to do is kind of like get at it from one end, try and lift it off. It's really problematic, if I've got to be honest. As you can see here, I'm going to be struggling. Try and find one end that you can flip up. Hold on. Because you have to do this and try not to snap it as well. What it is, it won't slide off, you see. So you're going to see me struggle a bit here. In fact, let me just put it down here. I need to try and lift up one end. Right, hold on. This might do it. There we go. Right, so I've managed to lift one end up there, as we can see. Now what I'm going to do is put my thumb underneath it and then use my thumb to pry it open. So I'm going to start pushing my thumb further in, or get fingers under it or something. I mean, this really is very difficult, as you can see, but be careful not to hurt your fingers when you do this. So I'm going to put my fingers under there. As you can see, they're quite squashed underneath there. Then I'm just going to try and push it down, and as we will see, it'll start lifting. There we go. So it's come off there. Now that's not the easiest thing in the world to do, as we can see. However, there is no way I would run this enclosure with the plastic on, because as I've already said, the plastic is an insulator and it's going to make the inside of that enclosure get even hotter. Okay, so that's how I took off the plastic bit. Okay, so moving on to inserting the SSD into the enclosure. Now what we need to do first of all is come to one of the ends here where we can clearly see that it says open on it. Then what we do, we kind of just get our thumb underneath that bit there and push up. Now don't push it right the way up, because this lid part here doesn't come all the way off. So if you just push it a bit, there we go, and it'll kind of lift itself up like that. Don't try and push it any further, because you might end up damaging something. But what it is, just grab the end at this point and then slide it that way. So as we will see, it just slides out. So that's how you take the lid off. So let me just show you that again. So just go to the edge here, or the end which has got open on it. It's got the arrow pointing up. Get your thumb under it. Just push it up slowly. Let it just hold itself like that. Grab the end and then just slide it out like that. Now with that compartment lid taken off, the next thing to do is to insert the SSD. So if we have a look here, there is the M.2 slot there at this end of the enclosure, and what we're going to see is there's like a little plastic notch on it there. Well, that plastic notch will line up with the cutout on the SSD there, so we basically can only put the SSD in one way. It cannot go in the wrong way round. And in fact, what I will do first of all is show you the wrong way round. So that's the wrong way round, and that's not going to go in. As we can see, there's nowhere for it to fit into. However, when we do it the right way round, the plastic notch on the M2 socket there lines up with the cutout on the SSD itself. So as we will see, I'll just line those up. Now just push in the SSD slowly, and you'll feel it kind of click in like it's done just there, but you'll know when it's gone in because you won't be able to see any of those copper pins anymore. So the whole thing is now flush inside, and in fact, if I just turn that on its side, as we will see, the SSD kind of holds itself up in the air like that, goes like a little bit springy. Well, in that instance, the SSD is now fully inserted. Now what we need to do, and this is quite tricky, we push the SSD down at this end. Now we're going to see this rubber bit here. Now this rubber bit, you have to twist it round, and then it kind of like locks around onto the end of the SSD there. It's actually quite fiddly. What I'm going to try and do is show you me doing it, but like I said, it's very fiddly. So if I can just kind of twist it, if I can, hold on. It's really difficult to get onto it, to twist it, you see. Hold on. And yeah, it's just difficult. Give me a second. As you can see, it's hardly twisting. Right, let me try and twist it the other way. What it is, it's got like a flat piece which is at the back here, as we might be able to see. Well, that flat piece needs to spin round and catch the drive on the front there, or on the back of the drive, and then it locks it in. Oh, I'm nearly there. Okay, right there. Again, this is a bit of a mess, but it's not me, it's just this mechanism's not that easy. Right, what it is, it's halfway closed over, as we can see. So that rubber piece now is catching on the back of the SSD. It won't move from that position, so that's going to be okay for me to use it there. Although ideally it should be turned right the way round, but I'm not able to do it. Hold on. Right, you know what, I'm going to leave it at that because it is locked into place, and that will be fine for what I'm doing here. So I'm going to leave it at that for now. Now the next thing to do is to remove this plastic film here from the thermal pad, which is on the inside of the door mechanism. So if I just turn it on its side there, as we can see, there's a thermal pad here, and then this is the protective plastic layer on it. Now it's got a little pull tab on it there, as we can see. So what I'm going to do is just pull that pull tab and then pull it right off. As we can see, there's that film come off, and now we have exposed the thermal pad there, and that is what we use to make direct contact to the SSD. Now the next thing that we need to do is to put this cover back on. Now this is the orientation that it needs to go on. So have a look here, that is the end of the SSD there, with like the little rubber stopper piece which holds the SSD inside the compartment. And if we have a look on the lid here, it's got like these little cutouts. There's a cutout there, and then there's a cutout there. They basically act as a hinge onto the end here of the inside of the enclosure. So just flip that over like that. Probably just slide it in across the top here, and it'll catch itself on the end there. You can't go past the end because that little hinge section has now caught itself on the end. Now you can just let go of it, and then on the inside here, in fact, let's see if I can get these in shot. On the inside here, there's a couple of little ball bearings which just lock into place when we push it down. So just push it down there. And there we go, that's on now. So let me just do that one quick time again. Hold on, so let me pop that off there. So once again, just make sure that this is the orientation that we're using. So that's the end of the SSD with the rubber stopper bit that holds the SSD into place. And this side here, or this edge of the actual mechanism for the lid, is got the cuts in it. So that's the hinge. And then we just kind of slide it in there, and then let it pop down, and then push it into place. And then the next thing to do is to just simply connect the SSD to the Mac. And for that, I'm going to be using this C to C cable that actually comes with the enclosure. So I'm just going to connect one end of the C to C cable into the C port on the actual enclosure. And then obviously the other end here goes into my Mac. Okay, so I've now got the external drive connected to my MacBook, and here it is here. And the reason why it's popped up with the name is because I've obviously already been using it. However, when you first install one of these types of SSDs and connect it, it may show up on your desktop like this one has done, and it might have like a name like Untitled or something like that, or it may not show up at all depending upon if there has already been a format applied to the SSD itself and whether the Mac will recognize it. However, don't worry about any of that, because what we are going to do is to format the SSD anyway before we start using it. So what we need to do is go to Disk Utility. Now, if you know where Disk Utility is, you go ahead and launch that. However, if you don't know where it is, no worries. If we come up here to the search icon here, so I'm just going to tap on the search icon and open up Spotlight Search. Now I'm just going to start typing in Disk Utility. And as we can see, it's come up there and prompted me for Disk Utility. So just going to tap on Disk Utility. Now at this point, I have got the drive attached here, as we can see. Now, there's one thing that I'm going to recommend, that when you do this, make sure that you do not have any other external SSDs or any type of external drive connected, even an SD card. And the reason why I'm saying that is just so that you don't accidentally format the wrong drive. Now, I've said this before in other videos, but I have actually done that, and yeah, that can be very problematic when you wipe out the wrong drive. So only have the one drive connected externally, which is this drive, and then this will be the only thing that you can format as far as the external drives are concerned. Now, another thing to be aware of before we go any further, up here where it says Disk Utility, next to it we've got this drop down folder. So if we tap on here, make sure that Show All Devices is selected, And the reason why we do that is just in case, as like, you know, it's showing here, there's already like containers and partitions on this drive. Now, if we have show all devices selected, we will be able to see the exact state of any drive connected, in which case what we would want to do is go to the root of the drive here. So tap on the root of it. Don't tap on container and don't tap on anything below the container. Just tap on the root of the drive there, and that is what we want to apply the format to, because in this instance this particular one has already had a format applied. So reformat the entire drive. Okay, now from there what we need to do is come over to where it says erase. We'll tap on erase. Now, as far as the formatting is concerned, we need to select APFS and also the GUID partition map. Now, there are going to be people out there in the comments start giving it all kinds about, oh, we'll use encrypted or case sensitive or blah blah journaled and all the rest of it, right? Simply use whatever you want. However, my recommendation is APFS. Now, if this drive is going to be used on another system, which is maybe say Windows or Linux or something like that, then you would definitely want to use exFAT, because APFS is very unlikely to be easily like read or written to on a Windows like, you know, setup without it having extra software in order to be able to do that, especially the writing back to APFS. So to be clear, if you plan on using a Windows system as well with this external drive, then select exFAT at this point. However, for Mac, I'm recommending APFS, and whoever wants to suggest whatever they want to suggest in the comments section below, feel free to do that, but my suggestion is APFS. Now, what we need to do is to give this a name. So the name that I'm going to give it is going to be something which is very descriptive. So 4 terabytes, 990 Pro, Thunderbolt 4 or TB4 APFS. You can, of course, call this whatever you want to, whatever makes sense to you, and something that will differentiate it against any other external drives that you may be using. Okay, now at this point, we just simply want to tap on erase. Now this is just going to go away. It will unmount the disk, then it's going to remount the disk, then it's going to do some stuff to do with like applying containers and partitions and stuff like that. Then eventually we get it to be done. Now, as you can see there, as I was talking, it actually had already done all the formatting and stuff, so very quick. Now let me just tap on done here. I'm just going to close the actual disk management or the disk utility there. Then as we can see, there's our now fresh drive on the desktop ready to be used. Now obviously what I'm going to do here as far as using it is concerned is to do some disk speed testing. Now the first thing that I'm going to do is the synthetic testing, and for that I'm going to use the Blackmagic disk speed test app. Now what I'm going to do is go into the options here. I'm going to leave it on 5 gigabytes here, just so that we've got like, you know, fairly big file size to be testing for the speeds. Now I'm going to go to select target drive. In fact, before I go any further, let me explain one other thing. Before I get into do my real world disk speed testing, that is going to be dictated to by the Mac's internal disk. So anything where you're doing transferring from the internal disk to the external disk can only be as fast as what the internal disk in that instance, because you will be actually moving physical data, which is what I will be doing shortly. So just ahead of that, what I'm going to do is to leave it selected on my home folder. So right now, when I press start, what we're seeing here is the Mac's internal SSD being tested. So as you can see here, the write speed is like well over 6,000 megabytes per second, and the read speed is over 5,000 megabytes per second. Now the reason why I'm showing you that is because, as I've just said, when I do the real world disk speed testing, we definitely need to know that the internal SSD is faster than the external SSD, in which case the only bottleneck that can occur is something to do with the external SSD and not the internal SSD. Anyway, with that explained and tested, I'm now going to go back to select target drive here. and I'm going to select the external drive. So let me just tap on open there. Right, I'm sorry, I've just had to do a jump cut because I've just had to go and answer the door. Right, so let me just confirm again for you. Here we go. I am choosing the external drive here to do the test with. So let me just start the speed test. Okay, so over 3,500 megabytes per second for the write and just under 3,500 megabytes per second for the read. Okay, so we're consistently over 3,500 for the write, and we're literally 9 megabytes per second off 3,500 for the read. Okay, we're 12 megabytes off on that go, but we're consistently just over 3,500 for the write and just under 3,500 for the read. Well, I'm going to average those out and just close them down and say both the read and the write are 3,500 megabytes per second. That is absolutely insane, and that is definitely the fastest that I have ever seen in any of the tests that I have ever done. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is get on to the real world disk speed testing. Now what I am going to do is to do the real world disk speed testing, and what this basically means is I'm going to move a whole bunch of data from the internal SSD to the external SSD and then go back again. And then what we're going to be doing there is testing the write and the read speed of the external SSD, but using proper real data. And as I've just explained, because we now know that the speed of the internal SSD is way faster than the external SSD, there will definitely be no bottlenecking of the data going to the external SSD. So what I'm going to do here is to open up the drive there. Now let me just open up my stopwatch. Okay, now this folder here contains a bunch of stuff in it. So if I just go to get info, as we will see here, the folder is 312 gigabytes in size, or to be precise, it is 312,593 megabytes in size. Now, this particular folder also has within it 2,565 items. So a lot of that is going to be video files, audio files, and picture files. So I'm not just choosing, say, 5 or 6 big files to move. I'm choosing a folder with over 2,500 items in it. And if I take a quick look in here, this is like a backup of some stuff. So this is like a ton of video files to do with old projects and stuff. And then on this one here, again, these are some backups for music and audio projects and some video stuff as well. So like I say, in amongst there's going to be a lot of music, audio files and stuff like that, and also the video files and what have you. But nonetheless, the important thing to note is it is 312,593 megabytes in size, and it has also got over 2,500 items in it. Okay, so this is going to be a proper stress test here. So what I'm going to do is pick that folder up, drop it onto there, hit start, and then we will time it. So let me drop and start. Okay, now between dropping and starting, there's obviously a bit of time there, but it's less than half a second, so we're not going to start adding half a second here and there. That is negligible. And as you can see, it is already plowing through this really quickly. But nonetheless, what I'm going to do here is to just speed up, and I'll come in just before it gets to the end. Okay, I'm just going to come back in here and get ready to click on pause once this folder has actually gone in here. So pause, there we go. Okay, so that's 1 minute and 29 seconds. I'll just round that up and call that 1 minute and 30 seconds. So basically that is 90 seconds. So 90 seconds as far as the writing of this particular folder is concerned. Now what I am going to do is to reset that stopwatch. I'm going to delete the folder from the desktop here, put it in the bin. I'm just going to empty the bin just to make sure that we don't have any residual files hanging around, which may end up being like confused with cache files and stuff. Then what I'm going to do is to drag that folder back to the desktop and hit start on the stopwatch. And obviously this time what I am doing is to record the read speed of the external drive. So let me just get ready here. So stop and start, or drop and start, sorry. Like I say, that was well less than a second to do that. So I'm not going to start like, you know, rounding up half seconds here and there and what have you. And once again, as we can see, this is actually going through really quite quickly. But nonetheless, what I'm going to do is just speed up this bit here until we get to the end, and I will come back in at the end and make a note of the timing. Okay, I'm just going to come back in here, and as soon as this folder fills up on the desktop, and hold on, there we go. So stop. I'm going to call that 1 minute and 26 seconds. So that is 86 seconds for the reading of that data. Now let me just quickly calculate the actual bit rates now. Okay, so as far as the real world disk speeds are concerned, for the write speed test, we are taking 312,593, which is the total folder size, and dividing that by 90 because it took 90 seconds to write all of that data to the external SSD, and that comes out at 3,473 megabytes per second for the bit rate, which is absolutely fantastic. However, when we flip over to the read speed test, once again we take the total size of the folder, which is 312,593 megabytes in size, and divide that by the amount of seconds it took to do the read speed, which in this instance was only 86, and that ends up giving us a read speed of 3,634 megabytes per second for the bit rate. Now, as we can clearly see there, both of those numbers are super impressive. However, what I am going to do now is to show you the results of what happens after the external SSD has been doing a bit more work and has had time to start heating up. Okay, so what I have done here is to move this test folder backwards and forwards a couple of times, which obviously means then that the external drive is starting to kind of like work harder and inevitably will heat up more. So what I'm going to do now is just run a quick speed test here on it. So let me just go and select the drive. So there we go, that's the external drive, and I'll put it back on. Well, it's still on 5 gigabytes now. Let's see what happens here. As we can see, that write speed has plummeted now, so that is less than half the speed. Now the read speed is still good, but the write speed, look at this, the write speed really has tanked. Again, the read speed is doing really well, but again, it's that write speed, it's really dropped now. And that is solely down to some throttling now being applied to the SSD because it is now heated up too much. I think we've obviously seen enough here to know exactly what's going on, and that there is absolutely like, you know, it's really disappointing because we are now at less than half of the performance of what that particular SSD is capable of achieving. And now just to quickly finish off the test, and I'm just going to do a quick temperature test here of the SSD. Now just remember, it's actually finished doing its work, but it's still quite hot afterwards. And look at this. So we're on around 52 degrees centigrade on the outside there, and that is, I mean, that really, it's too hot to hold for sure. However, if I get inside here, because it should be hotter on the inside, so I'm going to take some readings directly off the SSD itself. Wow, okay, it's a lot hotter. 64 degrees, 70 degrees. Okay, right, so down here, what's that saying? So that's 60, 66, 68, and then up here, this might be where the DRAM chip is, I don't know, but that's 72 degrees there. So that is extremely hot as far as I'm concerned. Let me just quickly get that back on. Okay, so as we could see there, that is the results of what was happening after those disk speed tests, and as far as I'm concerned, they are really hot temperatures. Okay, so to an end summary, and this will be quick, and the reason why is because everything that I've needed to say has already been said in the video there. Now, the first thing that I would like to just readdress is this whole thing of me showing something which was problematic, and like I'd already made out at the beginning of the video, I just would not have felt like a responsible tech YouTuber if I hadn't have shown this. The simple fact is, if I'd have not had this particular SSD and I'd, say, tested a different one out of the 4 that I tested and they were all fine, this problem wouldn't have come up, but it has come up. And since as it has come up, I can't just brush it under the carpet and hope that like it doesn't affect someone. Because if I'd have shown this exact same video but without the issue, and with say a recommendation for an SSD that did not do any like thermal throttling, that would have been okay because that's all that I would have known. But it still wouldn't have stopped someone from buying one of these and pairing it with one of them and then getting this exact problem. So like I say, because I found the issue there, it is something that has to be spoken about. Now, I've got to be honest, if I can get the time and I can do some extensive testing on a different SSD to match up with this Zike thing, and if it works fine, then yeah, I'll do another video. And I might actually use this as part of an external boot system as well for another video that I'm going to do about dual booting a Mac using an external SSD. I've already done videos like that in the past. However, there seems to be this thing at the moment where people are talking about moving your home directory and also your apps folder to an external drive. I mean, it's absolute madness. I don't even know why people are doing that. That is something that is like really, really, well, say dangerous. It's not like it's going to kill you, but it's dangerous to your software setup and stuff like that. So I'm going to do a video soon explaining why you don't do that. And what you should be doing is booting from the external SSD, in which case, if I can find something that works in this Zike enclosure and it's not problematic, then I'll readdress the Zike in that video as well with something that might work. The only problem is, it takes a while for me to do me testing. So what I can't really be doing is like wasting like, half a day or a day testing just different SSDs in here just to do a video that people might not even watch. Do you know what I mean? But if I can find something quickly, I will do that. Or if I just find something quickly that does work with it, I might just do a very quick video about it and go, look, this is great, it doesn't heat up and it doesn't have problems and stuff like that. But like I say, it's the test time with these things, and I just do not get like enough views to warrant testing constantly before I do a video. Anyways, yeah, I think that'll do it for this video. Anyway, you've seen everything that you've needed to see in the actual testing and stuff like that. So if you've liked the video, please do give it a thumbs up, and if you're into this type of stuff, then maybe a sub to the channel would be absolutely awesome. And if you do sub to the channel, it's a massive thank you from me. Now, I will have links to the Zike drive, the Zike enclosure in the video description below, and there will also be a discount code for it for buying it from Zike's website, because like I've just said, there could be other SSDs out there that work fine with it. However, you make that decision up for yourself as to whether it's going to be good enough for you with a different SSD. It is not something that I can recommend to you. However, I definitely wouldn't recommend you pair it up with one of these SSDs. Anyway, I'm David Harry. Thank you very much for watching this video. Take care and goodbye now.